Picture this. I'm in a clothing store fitting room, trying on a dress, when I hear my boyfriend on his phone just outside the door. And he says, I'll never forget these exact words. She didn't notice. The loan was approved. My heart stopped. What loan? What didn't I notice? I stood there in that fitting room, half-dressed, holding my breath, and listened to him continue talking. And what I heard in the next 3 minutes changed everything I thought I knew about the man I was planning to marry. If you want to know what loan he was talking about, what I'd missed, and how discovering his secret unraveled our entire relationship and revealed something about myself I'd never wanted to face, stay with me. And please, before we begin, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. Because this story is about betrayal, but it's also about the lies we tell ourselves when we're desperate to believe someone loves us. Let's start from the beginning. My name is Maya Reeves, and I'm 32 years old. The day I overheard that conversation in the fitting room was a Saturday in March, one of those early spring days when winter's finally loosening its grip, but hasn't fully let go. I'd been dating Ryan for 3 years. We lived together in a 2-bedroom apartment in the city. We talked about marriage, about kids, about buying a house in a neighborhood with good schools. We were, by all external measures, building a life together. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This story doesn't start with that whispered phone call. It starts with me at 29, newly single after a 5-year relationship imploded, sitting in a coffee shop trying to convince myself that being alone wasn't the same as being lonely. That's where I met Ryan. He was charming in that easy way that should have been a red flag but felt like relief. He had a good job in sales, a nice car, expensive tastes that I assumed meant he was successful. He took me to restaurants I couldn't afford on my graphic designer salary. He bought me gifts, flowers, jewelry, weekend trips to bed and breakfasts. He made me feel like I was worth pursuing, which after my ex had slowly stopped trying, felt intoxicating. We moved fast. 6 months in, he suggested we get an apartment together. It'll save us both money, he said. And I want to wake up next to you every morning. It was romantic and practical, which seemed like the perfect combination. I should mention something important about me. I come from a family where money was always tight. My parents divorced when I was 8. My mother raised 3 kids on a teacher's salary. I learned early that you don't ask for things you can't afford, that debt is dangerous, that financial security is more important than almost anything else. So when Ryan and I moved in together, I insisted we split everything 50-50. Rent, utilities, groceries, everything. You don't have to do that, Ryan said. I make more than you. I should contribute more. No, I said firmly. Equal partnership means equal contributions. He smiled like I'd said something adorable rather than establishing a boundary. Whatever makes you comfortable. That should have been red flag number 1. Not his offer to pay more, that was generous. But the way he smiled, like my insistence on financial independence, was cute rather than serious. Like he was indulging me rather than respecting me. The first year living together was good. We fell into routines. He left for work early. I worked from home most days. He traveled occasionally for sales conferences. I took on freelance projects. We had dinner together most nights. We watched movies on weekends. We were building something, I thought. Something real, but there were small things. Strange things I noticed but didn't fully process, like how Ryan always insisted on getting the mail. I'm downstairs anyway, he'd say when I offered to get it. No need for both of us to go, or how he was vague about his finances. I'd ask questions, not prying, just the normal inquiries a partner makes when you're living together and ostensibly planning a future. How's your 401k looking? Are you saving for a down payment? Should we start a joint account for shared expenses? His answers were always variations of, it's fine, or don't worry about it, or I've got it under control. I'd been raised to believe that talking about money was crass, so I didn't push. I figured if Ryan said things were fine, they were fine. I trusted him. Red flag number 2, trusting someone's word without verification, especially when they actively avoid giving you specifics. Around our 2nd year together, Ryan started talking more seriously about marriage. I want to spend my life with you, he said one night over dinner. I want to make this official. I want that too, I said, and I meant it. Despite the small inconsistencies, despite the vague financial conversations, I loved him. He was attentive, affectionate, supportive of my career. He made me laugh. He seemed committed to us. I've been saving for a ring, he said. Something worthy of you. But I need a few more months to get the budget together. Take your time, I said. I'm not going anywhere. A few weeks after that conversation, I noticed our rent payment bounced. I'd set up automatic transfers from my account for my half, but the landlord called saying the full amount hadn't been received. Ryan, did you pay your half of rent? I asked when he got home. He looked confused. Of course I did. Let me check with the bank. Must be an error. It wasn't an error. He'd forgotten to transfer the money. He paid it immediately, apologizing profusely, saying he'd been swamped at work and it slipped his mind. I believed him because why wouldn't I? People forget things. But it happened again 2 months later. And then with the electric bill. And then with his car insurance, I only knew about that one because an insurance company called our landline asking for him. Ryan, what's going on? I asked. You keep forgetting to pay bills. I'm sorry. Work has been insane. I'll set up autopay for everything. I promise. He did set up autopay. But then random charges started appearing on our shared grocery credit card. The one account we did have together, opened specifically for household expenses. Charges for restaurants I'd never been to. Charges for what looked like bar tabs. Charges for purchases I didn't recognize. Ryan, what are these? I showed him the statement. Oh, work dinners. Client meetings. I'll reimburse the account. He'd reimburse some of it, but not all. And when I pushed, he'd get defensive. Maya, I'm doing my best. I'm working my ass off to save for our future, and you're nickel and diming me over a few restaurant charges? I felt guilty after those conversations. Like I was being petty, controlling, too focused on money when we had something more important. Love. Red flag number 3. Letting someone make you feel guilty for asking reasonable questions. Around our 3rd year together, Ryan proposed. He did it beautifully. Rented a cabin in the mountains, cooked dinner, got down on one knee with a ring that looked expensive. I cried. I said yes. We called our families. We set a date for the following year. We started planning, and that's when things started unraveling, though I didn't see it clearly until that day in the fitting room. Planning a wedding requires coordination and communication about money. Ryan and I had very different ideas about what we could afford. I want a destination wedding, he said. Somewhere tropical. Jamaica, maybe. Ryan, that's expensive. And our families can't afford to travel internationally. So we pay for them. With what money? I told you I've been saving. We can afford it. Can we see the savings account? So I know what we're working with? His face closed off. Maya, do you trust me or not? I trust you. I just want to understand our financial situation before we make big decisions. You sound like you're auditing me rather than planning a wedding with me. We compromised on a local venue. Something affordable but nice. But when it came time to put down the deposit, Ryan said he'd handle it. We should both contribute, I said. Let me do this, he insisted. Let me take care of this one thing. I agreed, partly because he seemed so earnest, partly because I was tired of fighting about money. He put down the deposit, but when I asked for the receipt, he said he'd misplaced it. You misplaced a receipt for a $5,000 deposit? I'll get a copy from the venue. He never did. That's when I started feeling the first real tendrils of suspicion. Not enough to act on, just enough to make me pay more attention. I started noticing things, like how Ryan would sometimes get calls he'd step out of the room to take, how he'd close his laptop when I walked by, how he'd become defensive about seemingly innocent questions. What's your credit score? I asked once, thinking about applying for a mortgage. Why do you need to know? Because if we're buying a house together, both our credit scores matter. Mine's fine. Can I see your credit report? Jesus, Maya, do you want my social security number too? My bank statements? Should I give you access to all my accounts? I'm not trying to invade your privacy. I'm trying to understand our financial health as a couple. You know what? I think you have trust issues from your ex. You're projecting your fears onto me. And just like that, my concern became my problem. My reasonable request became evidence of my damage. I backed off, apologized. Told myself he was right. I probably did have trust issues. Red flag number 4. Accepting gaslighting as legitimate criticism. The Saturday in March when everything changed started normally. Ryan and I went shopping for wedding clothes. He needed a suit. I wanted a dress for the rehearsal dinner. We went to a mall, split up to browse, agreed to meet in an hour. I found a dress I liked at a boutique. Nothing fancy, just a simple navy dress that fit well. I took it into the fitting room to try it on. The fitting rooms in this store were individual stalls with doors that didn't quite reach the floor. I could hear snippets of conversation from other shoppers, and presumably they could hear me if I talked loud enough. I was buttoning the dress when I heard Ryan's voice just outside my fitting room. He was on his phone, speaking quietly. I wouldn't have paid attention except I heard my name. Maya doesn't know. She didn't notice when she signed. I froze. Signed what? The loan was approved. They used her credit just like we planned. My heart stopped. Used my credit? What loan? Yeah, $60,000. Should be in my account by Monday. $60,000. In his account. Using my credit. She's so focused on the wedding, she's not paying attention to anything else. It was easier than I thought. I felt like I was drowning. Like the fitting room had filled with water and I couldn't breathe. I stood there in that navy dress, holding perfectly still, listening to my fiancé explain to someone, I couldn't tell who, how he'd manipulated me into co-signing a loan I didn't know about. I just need to keep her distracted until after the money clears. Then it doesn't matter. What's she going to do, cancel the wedding? He laughed. Actually laughed. Yeah, I'll pay you back your cut once I get the cash. Thanks for the fake documents, man. They looked completely legit. She signed without even reading. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. My mind was racing through recent memory, trying to find the moment he was talking about. When had I signed something without reading? And then I remembered. 3 weeks ago. Ryan had brought home papers he said were for the wedding venue. Contract modifications about the catering package. He'd been in a hurry, said the venue needed them back immediately. Just sign here and here, he'd said, pointing. It's standard stuff. I already read through it. I'd signed. I'd trusted him and I'd signed. All right, I gotta go. Maya's still in the fitting room. Talk later. I heard him walk away. I stood there shaking, staring at myself in the mirror. The navy dress looked ridiculous now. I looked ridiculous. A woman who'd been so desperate to believe in love that she'd ignored every warning sign. Every red flag, every moment of intuition screaming that something was wrong. I changed back into my clothes mechanically. I left the dress in the fitting room. I walked out of the store, found a bench in the mall, and sat down. I texted Ryan. Something came up. Go home without me. He responded immediately. Everything okay? Where are you? I need some time. I'll explain later. I went to a coffee shop. I ordered something I didn't drink. I sat in a corner booth and tried to process what I'd just learned. My fiancé had forged documents. He'd tricked me into signing a loan application. He'd taken out $60,000 in both our names. He was planning to take the money and, run? Disappear? Get married and saddle me with debt I didn't know about? I called my brother. He's a lawyer. Not the kind that deals with fraud, but he knows people who do. Nick, I need help. My voice broke. What's wrong? I told him everything. The overheard conversation. The signed venue papers. The $60,000 loan. Nick was quiet for a long moment. Maya, you need to file a police report. Immediately. What he did is fraud. Identity theft, forgery, multiple felonies. He's my fiancé. He's a criminal who's been grooming you for 3 years. The word hit me like cold water. Grooming, I thought we were building a life. He'd been building a con. Nick stayed on the phone with me while I went to the police station. I filed a report. I gave them copies of texts, emails, any documentation I had. The detective took my statement and said they'd investigate. He also warned me, if the loan's already approved and the money's transferred, recovering it will be difficult. And if your name's on the application, you're legally responsible for the debt until we prove fraud. I called my bank. I froze my credit. I pulled my credit report. There it was. A personal loan for $60,000 opened 3 weeks ago in both our names. My credit score had already taken a hit from the heart inquiry. I felt sick. Physically, violently sick. I went to the bathroom and threw up. That night, I went home. Ryan was there watching TV like nothing had happened. Hey, babe, you okay? You seemed weird earlier. I looked at him. This man I'd lived with for 3 years, this man I'd planned to marry, and I didn't recognize him. He was a stranger wearing a familiar face. I heard you, I said. At the mall. On the phone. I heard everything. His face went through several expressions very quickly. Confusion, realization, calculation, then denial. I don't know what you're talking about. You took out a $60,000 loan in my name. You forged documents. You tricked me into signing. Maya, you're being paranoid. I think you need help. I filed a police report. I froze my credit. I pulled the loan records. I have evidence. His expression changed to something I'd never seen before. Cold fury. You did what? I protected myself from your fraud. That loan was for us. For the wedding. For our future. You said it was going into your account. You said you'd pay back your cut. Those aren't the words of someone taking out a joint loan for a wedding. He stood up. Get out. This is my apartment, too. My name's on the lease. I said, get out. No. We stared at each other. Then Ryan grabbed his keys and wallet and left, slamming the door hard enough that the walls shook. I called Nick back. Can I stay with you tonight? Already made up the guest room. I packed a bag. I left before Ryan came back. I stayed with Nick and his wife for 2 weeks while lawyers and police detectives sorted through the mess Ryan had created. Here's what they found. Ryan had been running this scam for years. I wasn't the first. He'd meet women, build relationships, gain their trust, and then manipulate them into taking out loans or opening credit cards in their names. He'd use fake documents, forge signatures, create elaborate stories about investments or business opportunities. He'd take the money and disappear, leaving his victims with debt and destroyed credit. He'd done this to at least 6 women before me. He was being investigated in 3 states. The sales job he supposedly had? He'd been fired 18 months ago for embezzlement. He'd been living off credit card advances and short-term loans, supplementing with money he conned from his girlfriends. The engagement ring? Cubic zirconia. Worth maybe $300. The wedding venue deposit? Never paid. The venue had no record of a booking under our names. Everything, every word, every gesture, every promise, had been a lie designed to keep me compliant until he could drain me dry. The detective explained it to me gently. These kinds of con artists are master manipulators. They choose victims carefully. They look for people who are trusting, who want to believe in love, who have good credit and stable incomes. You weren't stupid. You were targeted. I wanted to believe him. But I also knew the truth. I'd ignored red flags because I was more afraid of being alone than I was of being used. The legal process took months. Ryan was arrested. He pled guilty to multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and forgery. The prosecutor said he'd likely serve 5 to 7 years. The $60,000? Gone. He'd transferred it immediately to offshore accounts. We recovered about $8,000. The rest was lost. I was left with debt I couldn't prove wasn't mine. Despite the police report, despite the fraud investigation, credit bureaus don't remove items until the fraud is definitively proven, which can take years. My credit score dropped over 200 points. I couldn't qualify for an apartment on my own. I couldn't get a new credit card. I was financially devastated. I spent a year rebuilding. I lived with Nick and his wife. I took on every freelance project I could find. I worked with a credit counselor to create a payment plan for the debt. I went to therapy to process the betrayal, the shame, the self-blame that kept me awake at night. My therapist, Dr. Ellen Chen, was patient with me. You're going to want to blame yourself, she said. You're going to go through every memory and find all the moments you could have caught him. You're going to tell yourself you were stupid, naive, desperate. And I need you to resist that urge. How? I ignored so many signs. You trusted someone you loved. That's not a character flaw. That's what humans do. We trust. We give people the benefit of the doubt. We believe the best about people we care about. Ryan exploited that. But your capacity for trust isn't the problem. His willingness to abuse it is. I feel so stupid. You're not stupid. You're human. And you're learning something important. Trust has to be earned. It's not a gift you give freely. It's a privilege people maintain through consistent, honest behavior. That lesson took a long time to internalize. Even now, 4 years later, I still struggle with it. Ryan's trial made local news. Several of his other victims came forward. We formed a sort of informal support group, 6 women, ranging in age from 25 to 48, all of whom had been conned by the same man using the same playbook. We met monthly for a year, sharing stories, comparing notes, helping each other rebuild. One of the women, Jennifer, said something that stuck with me. I spent 6 months hating myself for being gullible. Then I realized I wasn't gullible. I was generous. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I chose to believe his explanations instead of my intuition. That's not a weakness. That's a choice I made based on the information I had. And he systematically hid information from me to keep me from making different choices. She was right. We weren't stupid. We were deliberately manipulated by someone skilled at manipulation. I started dating again 2 years after Ryan's arrest. Tentatively. Carefully. I was hypervigilant about red flags, which meant I probably rejected some good men along with the questionable ones. I'd go on dates and conduct background checks. I'd ask invasive questions about finances and credit scores. I'd request references like I was hiring an employee rather than pursuing a relationship. Dr. Chen gently suggested I was overcorrecting. You've gone from too trusting to not trusting at all. Neither extreme is healthy. How do I find the middle? You trust slowly. You verify. You pay attention to patterns of behavior over time. You don't make major commitments until someone has proven their trustworthiness through consistent, honest actions. And you listen to your intuition. The red flags with Ryan were there. You felt them. You just didn't honor those feelings. Because I was afraid of losing him. Right. So the question becomes, what are you more afraid of now? Being alone or being used? I had to think about that. The honest answer, being used. I'd rather be alone forever than go through what Ryan put me through. But Dr. Chen pushed back. Being alone forever is also a kind of prison. You're letting Ryan's actions define your future. You're giving him power over you even though he's in jail. She had a point. I met Marcus 3 years after Ryan's arrest. He was a teacher, solid, stable, boring in the best possible way. He had student loans and a modest savings account and a credit score he showed me on our 3rd date without me asking. I know you've been through something, he said. My sister went through a similar situation. I want you to feel safe with me. We dated slowly. We talked about everything: finances, family, fears, future plans. He was patient when I had panic attacks about trusting him. He understood when I needed to verify things he told me. He didn't get defensive when I asked hard questions. I'm not him, Marcus would say when I'd spiral into anxiety about being conned again. And I'm willing to prove that to you as many times as you need. We've been together for 1.5 years now. I still have moments of fear. I still check our bank accounts more often than I should. I still have nightmares about signing documents without reading them, but I'm also learning to trust again, slowly, carefully, with evidence and consistency rather than hope and wishful thinking. The debt from Ryan's fraud is almost paid off. My credit score is recovering. I'm no longer living with my brother. I have my own apartment again, my own space, my own life rebuilt from the ashes of what Ryan destroyed. I ran into one of Ryan's other victims at a coffee shop last month. Sandra. She'd been the woman before me. We hugged like war veterans, recognizing each other. How are you doing? I asked. Good, really good, actually. I'm engaged. For real this time, to a man who showed me his tax returns before proposing? We both laughed. Do you ever think about him? She asked. Sometimes. Usually when I'm signing something important. I get this moment of panic where I have to read every line 3 times. Me too. But I guess that's not the worst thing. Being careful. No, I agreed. It's not the worst thing. In the fitting room, I heard my boyfriend whisper, "She didn't notice, the loan was approved." And in that moment, my entire life changed. Not because he said those words, he'd probably been planning that con for months. But because I finally heard what I'd been too afraid to hear, the truth. The truth was that I'd been choosing love over self-protection. I'd been choosing the fantasy of a relationship over the reality of who I was with. I'd been so desperate not to be alone that I'd partnered with someone who saw me not as a person, but as a mark. And once I heard the truth, once I couldn't unhear it, I had to make a choice. Stay and pretend I didn't know, hoping he'd somehow become the man I wanted him to be? Or leave and face the devastation of starting over, of admitting I'd been conned, of rebuilding from nothing. I chose the latter. It was the harder choice. But it was also the only choice that honored the truth. If you've ever been in a relationship where something felt off but you couldn't name it, where your intuition screamed but you talked yourself out of listening, where you chose love over safety, please subscribe to this channel. Because stories like mine are more common than we want to admit. And we need to talk about them. We need to learn from them. We need to understand that being targeted doesn't make you stupid. It makes you human. Thank you for staying with me through this. Thank you for witnessing this story. Thank you for understanding that betrayal is complex, that recovery takes time, and that learning to trust again after profound violation is one of the bravest things a person can do.